Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session, Live Here, Think There. Here is our moderator, CEO iWorks UK Group Limited, Paul Jackson.
Hi, and welcome. Thank you very much indeed. It's very nice of you all to turn up here, particularly the two of you who don't work for any of the companies that we represent up here, who've come along anyway. It's very good of you, and always glad to see Greg Lipston in the crowd on his BlackBerry, because it wouldn't be quite the same if he was listening 100%. Now, and also, can I say thank you so much for this design and setting. I rarely work without glitter balls, so I'm very pleased that the arrangements have been made. Listen, I'm delighted. This is an extraordinary panel that we have here. Paul Bucheri, my old friend and successor as President and CEO of ITV Studios, or Granada, as I insist on calling it. We have Emiliano Kamzut, who is CEO of Shine Group in America. We have David Goldberg, Chairman of Endemol North America. And we have Keith Hindle, CEO Americas of Fremantle. So really, four of the biggest global companies that do operate in Los Angeles. And I'd like to start by asking you guys, maybe we'll start down the end with Emiliano and work up here. You do have an extraordinary job. I mean, these are really, really desirable positions. You sit at the nub, I think, of four of the biggest communication groups in the world. There's always something going on. Emiliano at the moment is not only possibly selling the company, but in the middle of one huge show and prepping for another one coming up. David's always in the middle of some commercial activity. Keith with Idol just on the air and X Factor in the prep. I mean, there's big stuff going on for all you guys, and Paul is Paul. Emiliano, what is it a great and exciting job? I mean, is it just fantastic?
It's an incredible job. It's a great opportunity. It's a great responsibility more than anything, because I think one of the things that we're all going to agree in this panel is that we're going through fundamental change in the economics of television, and what created this business decades ago is not necessarily true today, and it's going to continue to change in the next year, 3-5 years. So I think the exciting part of the opportunity is to be able to shape the economics of this business so that it continues to be a business in the future, not just a form of art.
David, how's it looking from Endemol at the moment?
Well, I would say that the real benefit of the job, unequivocally, is that your bosses are about 6,000 miles away. So that in itself is a benefit. And that's part of what makes it so exciting is that we sort of get to experiment and try new businesses and structure deals the way we see appropriate without a tremendous amount of interference from our bosses overseas, although we keep them in the loop. You know, one of the things about these global companies is that every territory has a different relationship with broadcasters, a different way of creating deals, and a different way of seeing the media world. So we respect those differences, and that makes our jobs a lot easier.
Now, David, you started the company, I think, just about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago from the very beginning?
Yes, started it in September of 2000. Everything from finding offices to setting a bank account to
really
figuring out shows we were going to go out and pitch. And I mean, that was one of the most exciting aspects of the job, and it's not quite as speculative as it used to be, but we still have our moments.
Keith, you 10 years ago, you just came over here. You're a Brit. You arrived in Los Angeles. What was Fremantle? Fremantle was a bit more in a startup at that point.
I've been here for a long time, but the last 10 years have been dramatic, with some of the huge European formats really taking off here, like American Idol, America's Got Talent, building on the ones we had before, which were very powerful, long-running formats like The Price is Right and Family Feud, but in a very different genre. So it was very interesting to bring that new range of TV over just as I started here in the US. The great thing about the job, it's similar to David's point, is that unlike most of our purely American colleagues, we have this fabulous flow of content from around the world, from our international offices, usually to take advantage of, as well as domestic production, of course, but that can give us a sense of confidence and a sense of a real reason to be in front of the clients all the time, which is quite an advantage. The bad things are getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning because the Philadelphia phone system has collapsed in the middle of American Idol. That's the bad thing. But Most of the time it's good. Also, I think there's a certain, Fremantle's lucky enough to have been around for long enough to have a certain maturity in how it operates. So it's taken a long time, I think, to push this down into the organization, but now when we're looking at a piece of content, wherever it's from, whether it's one of our shows or a third-party show that we invest in, we're from the beginning thinking where we can take it. How is it going to work internationally? Which other platforms can we take it to? Which advertisers can we talk to about it? Very much from the outset. And that took a long time to get all of our producers to feel comfortable doing. So that's a nice development.
Now, I want to come to Paul before we widen out the discussion. Paul, you're slightly different from the other three in the fact that your parent company is actually a broadcaster, the biggest commercial broadcaster in the UK. Does that give you any different leverage or any different problems?
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to take advantage of that as much as we should. Hell's Kitchen, we obviously have that, and our focus now is to really move in that direction with ITV in the UK.
I suppose I was going to ask all four of you, but I suppose I'll start with you, Paul, because it particularly applies to you. Clearly, this market is the mecca. It's the pot at the end of the rainbow if you get it right here. So do you feel pressure from other parts of your global enterprises to, or do you push pressure back onto them to get shows effectively piloted by getting them broadcast in smaller markets? I mean, is that something within the company that you kind of, look, Denmark, for God's sake, just put it on because I need a piece of tape. I mean, does it work like that, Paul?
Our focus now is definitely to get shows on in the other markets around the world. We've actually taken steps in the U.S., our U.S. company, to actually sell to other parts of the world, and we've been now successful with one, and that will be announced very shortly.
You can't tell us now, Paul?
Not now.
But that's what, a show that's come from?
From ITV America, and we sold it to ITV UK.
Okay.
So,
Come on, Paul, it's okay.
No, I can't do it. Can't do it.
So you're in there pitching the UK broadcaster?
Yeah, we pitched the UK broadcaster, and we were fortunate enough that they liked the show enough that they granted us a commission. So, you know, I mean, there's always, you know, as we all know, there's, you know, great advantages of this global network, because at any given time, it could be Australia, Germany, Spain, where they get a show on, and we have the ability to leverage it here in the United States. Us as a company, Endemol, I think, has been a great example of doing that for Fremantle as well. ITV needs to take further steps in that area.
How do you find it, Keith? I mean, you are a broadcaster in a lot of Europe, although not in the UK.
Not in the US. Still, a US, for us, for a US broadcast is massively important, and so a format can have had some life in territories around the world and still not reach that stratosphere of international distribution as a tape or format until it has a US window. It is in a different level to us of what it can achieve. That said, a lot of stuff does come out of international. It's still hard to sell it in the US, but it does. Last year, just over a year and a half ago, we had a new format from France called Take Me Out, which is now in 14 countries. Very nice, very quick to export around the world, but still not necessarily a slam dunk sale in the US. So there's still an expectation. The other interesting thing is how the international buyers in the major markets are quite sophisticated, and they won't just be delighted that there's a broadcast in the US. They want to know what network it was on, when was it on, who's the talent. You know, it's still it's a demanding marketplace even for US formats.
David, your company is famous for the multiplicity of its activity around a show. I mean, indeed, as is Fremantle, but I think you were very early there in the early days of Big Brother in the UK with seeing all the other platform uses and so on. That actually is easier to do in some of the European markets than it is here, and certainly more profitable.
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question.
Well, in terms of phone revenue, in terms of gambling sites, in terms of...
Oh, you're saying that it's more profitable and more viable in these other markets?
Outside America. I mean, you know, everybody looks to America.
Well, I think in general there's a bit of a misnomer about America being the mecca and the promised land for formats and programming. And while a really successful show in America can you know, be of great benefit, there are certain restrictions that make it a little bit more difficult to profit in a way that you can in a lot of other countries. For example, Big Brother's been a very strong player for us for almost 10 years now, but it's never been able to achieve the kind of record numbers that it has in markets like France and in the UK, where for whatever broadcasters are willing to pay excessive amounts of money for the format, and all of the ancillary businesses seem to be a lot more profitable as well.
So, without giving numbers away, David, but I'm guessing that in the much smaller UK market, on a minority channel, Channel 4 is still a slightly junior channel, they probably made more money out of Big Brother than you did on a primetime network here with a big successful show.
They may have made more money on that one show than we did in an entire year on all of our programming at one point. I mean, that's how,
seriously.
you know, that's not completely accurate, but it's close to being accurate, and that's how valuable some of these monster formats can be, particularly outside of the United States. Although for the United States, I would say with American Idol notwithstanding, the real promised land for us has been getting our shows into off-network syndication and to a equal or maybe lesser degree rankings bonuses that used to exist, which are becoming much more difficult to achieve because as the network ratings have declined dramatically, for some reason the networks haven't dropped those ranking thresholds on a pro rata basis. So it's amazing how they can, how that happens.
I want to come back to the syndication issue, but Emiliano, look at a show like MasterChef. I mean, that's eventually arrived here, having really run pretty much all around the world before you got it sold in America. How did that work for you guys, and how important is the American sale?
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, I think being part of a global group and going to the Denmarks or the Australias of the world, saying well, how did that work, and learning as you go in different markets. By the time you bring it to the U.S., it's clearly not fail-safe, but a lot of the experimentation has already taken place. MasterChef's a format that comes out of the UK, obviously, but Australia is a country, the market.
It was Australia in that case that really turned the history, wasn't it?
Australia really tweaked the format. Obviously it comes from a different time slot in the UK. Australia became a primetime show, became stripped, very high volume. But even creatively, the Australians have really created the format that eventually came into the US. So it does help a lot to have entities in other places that can actually play with an idea and try a lot of different things. And it was funny because we had a commercial MasterChef summit in London 2 weeks ago, where everybody from every production company just came in together. And it was just looking at what the Indians were doing with the format and what the Australians and what and really there's a wealth of expertise and experience. So when we go into the production of season 2 now, we really got a lot to look at and learn from. So it's really valuable. And the second point of being sort of part of a larger group, it's also a big responsibility because when a small country for some reason has a format that is really liked by a U.S. network, for you it's just one of the many things that you got to pay attention to. But for that particular country, it's the one opportunity to bring a show into the U.S. So it's also very important to them, and really navigating those waters where you really got to focus on making sure that everybody's happy and how you're running the production of each show is.
Now, those relationships obviously are crucial within any group, and I understand exactly what you mean. You've got a smallish territory who suddenly sees this rainbow opening up for them. In the 4 organizations, both creatively and financially, are there very strict rubrics, other methods, systems laid down? You were talking about the meeting in London. Do you do that for all your big shows? Do you other guys do that? And then is the financial deal already written? I'm a small territory, I've got a show, I'm going to get 20%. That's just written down, I'm signed up, there's no debate of the company profit, if you see what I mean. I'm going to start this end and come along. Paul, how does it work for ITV?
At ITV, we have terms of trade that are established through all the group, so everyone knows where the flow of money goes once a format has been sold and is in production.
And what about creatively? If you see a show from the UK that you like, but you just got to twist the end game because it's just not going to work, do you have the freedom to do that?
They give us the latitude in our market to do what we will creatively. Always when you sell a show, as much as you want to keep the framework of the format that works successfully around the world, the broadcasters weigh in and give their 2 cents on how we should adapt it to our market, how we can make it successful. An example, Hell's Kitchen was done as a strip in the UK. It was done with celebrities as contestants. In the US, as you know, thank you, Paul, for selling that. We have it as a weekly. It's chefs aspiring to be like Gordon. So there are the undercurrents of the same format, same format points, but if you look at the two shows, there's quite different pacing, and the U.S. tends to be not on every show, but on a lot of shows you amp it up, you make it bigger.
Certainly make it louder.
Yeah.
And maybe the answer is the same for all the companies. Do you all have terms of trade internally within the global?
No, we actually don't. I mean, I keep going to CBS and saying I want the Channel 4 deal for Big Brother, but for some reason they just keep saying no. So I use it to my advantage when it makes sense, and I use it to my, if it's a disadvantage, I don't use it. But I think one of the things that Endemol kind of prides itself on is its position of letting each country negotiate their own terms and adjust the content creatively to fit the needs of that local company and that local country. Now, I mean, we don't turn a game show into a docu-soap, obviously, but and wherever possible, we try to, keep some degree of semblance to that original show. But you really, if you get into that game of rubber stamping your content all around the world, ultimately, I think it hurts you.
Unless it's Millionaire, in which case, of course, that's exactly the right way to go.
Yeah, there would be. I mean, on the creative side at Fremantle, every production company has a thudding Bible that's the format of a show that will land on their desk, and that's where they have to start from. There'll absolutely be local deviations, but we do try and stick to it strongly because that's what the client bought. And we actually have, one of the things we're proud of is we have a group of what we call flying producers, who are very, very experienced producers who will fly in the early stage of a new format being launched in a new country and will ensure that the tenets that we know make that format a success happen in that country. Countries will then tend to drift off to a certain extent into what really works for them, but that's a key point for us. We do get people together to have big group working sessions on different countries. That tends to be very helpful from a production cost point of view and production efficiency point of view. We noticed at a big Got Talent session, which is Simon Cowell's format, we got together with Psycho and all of our producers from around the world, looked at the way the Got Talent show that people will know as America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent, looked at how it was being produced around the world, and the Greek production was absolutely fantastic. With a tiny budget, it looked like the American show. So we spent most of the day figuring out how they did that, and they had all sorts of wonderful techniques we could export to the smaller markets. So those kind of things are really, really valuable. But in terms of deal making with the networks, certainly that's largely an independent country-by-country thing. Deal making internally, absolutely very clear terms of trade between the different parts of the company, primarily focused on rights retention.
Right.
One of the key sort of things that Fremantle has tried to do is, in its negotiations with the networks, don't give up rights if you can come up with any possible way of avoiding that. So one of our underlying sort of things that we try and do. And to be able to be in a position to retain rights, you have to have a big enough team and the resources to be able to justify holding on to them.
But one obvious technique for retaining the rights is to have it already piloted and sold in a smaller market
It
where
helps.
it's just not available to us.
Yeah.
Emiliano, what about creatively with a show like MasterChef? I mean, clearly the show that eventually came out of Australia and created a sensation. I think it is the most viewed television show, non-sport show in the history of Australian television, which in 2009 or whatever it was is a pretty unusual thing to happen. That was a different show, quite frankly, from the show you'd been selling before. Do the Australians get a payback from that, or is it just MasterChef and that's it?
No, I mean, the Australian case makes all of us look like underperformers. So it was a 73% share. I mean, they had to postpone the debate of the two candidates for Prime Minister for 2 hours because the final MasterChef was on the air. Really an outlier. I can't put it on. Even the most successful show in the U.S. Can get to 70-something% share, but clearly it was an opportunity in the market where they needed more volume. They had to do it for prime time, and there was an opportunity. I mean, to create a very simple concept into an all-inclusive sort of ready for prime time show with a lot of ancillary possibilities, and there was a lot of creative work done in the format. The creator of the format played ball as well, and a good opportunity to take something that was more for a daytime audience into prime time successfully, and really was great for the group. And then, you know, when it went on the air in France, I was there for the shooting of the finale. Did very well as well. You know, it's a format that continues to grow around the world. It's just getting launched in a lot of other places as well. So,
how much of your job is involved in observing this market? This is the biggest market. It's the most diverse market. There's constant new product coming through, even in these difficult last couple of years. How much of your job is a matter of feeding that back? And you all have your own very big, substantial development teams. Is it any part of your job to be going out and getting new shows in that you see buzzing around in the American market, actually buying that IP and bringing it within the group?
We have somebody in our company that works as part of our distribution group that lives in my offices, and that is his main task. So, I mean, I clearly will let people know of programs that I think are of value. And interestingly enough, you know, the third-party market really doesn't. It goes the other way. It very rarely comes from overseas in terms of being able to acquire third-party material. And yes, we have our projects are part of our existing library, but it's very hard as an American production company to convince somebody in the UK or in another market to let us be involved in that project, because it's kind of obvious most people that have a show that they've come up with, they want to sell either directly to a broadcaster and be very integral in producing that show, whereas that isn't the case if they want to sell their product to Sweden, and no disrespect to those companies, but a lot of those people just don't have the time to go and, you know, be hands-on as a producer. So yes, we do keep our eye on the stuff that's working in the U.S.
What about Fremantle, Keith? I mean, do you actively seek? I was talking more American formats that you can buy in and bring.
Yeah, but I think I agree with David completely in that it's almost impossible to secure an American format and then produce it yourself in America. No other producer is worth their salt is going to let us do that. But we do manage and try very, very hard to acquire formats and tape from the US that we can then produce around the world. So we produce Project Runway for the Weinsteins in other countries. We produce The Apprentice for Mark Burnett in other countries outside of the US. So that goes, it's a very strong format acquisition effort we do, as well as the huge distribution tape acquisition effort, which happens at markets like this. So buying a great deal of finished product. But we also try and look for unusual things. I keep coming back to sort of ancillary exploitation, but a format we acquired several years ago from Japan wasn't one of ours. We just saw it on TV called Hole in the Wall. We've made it in lots of other countries, but perhaps more fun is that it's going to be on Project Natal's, you know, one of their next game on Microsoft Natal. When we can see those kind of benefits to it, that makes the format a lot more exciting for us and worth the pain.
I've got to say, whoever saw that, because, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, that is an item. That's not a show. Hole in the Wall is a 5-minute item, and yet you've sold it as a show all around the world. I mean, kudos. Emiliana, how about the Shine Group? Do you actively encourage people, I mean, there's people here at this market, do you actively encourage people to bring you shows which you would, if you were interested, take around the globe?
I would say that we're mostly focused on leveraging our IP around the world and focusing our distribution efforts in going to every single territory, maximizing our own IP. There is the occasional pickup, but we clearly focus. I mean, we believe in our ability to develop good IP, and we devote most of our sales time and effort to leveraging that in all markets. So it's occasional.
There are people within our company that do that, but it's really not our. It's not our role. It's really part of our distribution company, and we have people in our distribution company who live in America, whose job it is to find existing finished programs and existing formats that can be sold around the world.
Just to warn the floor, we're coming towards a Q&A time, so if anybody does have anything that they want to ask, please be ready in a couple of minutes. Can I just ask you, maybe finally from me, certainly if I look across the pond from the UK I think has been a very, very constipated market for the last couple of years. It's been very, very difficult to get any new product away. And our impression, I think maybe more so on the scripted side even, but America's constantly throwing off these extraordinarily exciting dramas and comedies as well as entertainment shows. Is that how it feels to you guys? Do you think it's you've not suffered quite as badly as, I mean, clearly you've had a depression, we all have, but not quite as badly as the rest? Is business still good? The network system, clearly the numbers are dropping, the syndication system getting harder and harder, although Endemol seems to have cracked it with reality, which is quite a trick.
I think it's sort of a tale of two cities. I think that it has become much more difficult to sell network programming, original network programming created in the United States, although we've had, of late, some success. So that seems to be picking up. But by and large, I would say that most U.S. networks are more interested in finding stuff with an international track record. I think where, and that's not, sort of categorical. There certainly are opportunities still. I think on the cable side, however, there's been a burgeoning of product and ideas, and so I think that's where more of our attention has gone as the years go on. I mean, we're clearly still very focused on U.S. primetime networks, but cable, I think, is where the real opportunity has opened up.
Paul, have you found syndication for reality shows? Because they're not immediately transferable, are they?
Well, we've had success now. We decided to take out Hell's Kitchen. We made that deal. That will come out in 2012. But our focus has been a little bit different. We've delved into going into first-run syndication, where we create our own shows and we've been able to sell them. Or we take a format like Jeremy Kyle, who's the #1 talk show host in the UK. We brought him over to the States. We're launching him.
He's here, I think, at the market.
Yeah, he's here at the market right now. We're launching him in a national syndication. We made a deal with the Ray Cobb Station Group. We are doing a strip with them for syndication. We have another show that's going to be launched in a limited run, a test run called The Chefs for syndication. So as you all know, I mean, prime time is great dollars, cable's less. First run syndication, if you get it right, dwarfs them all. So, and that's why...
If you get the right...
And you have to make the distinction between the two. I mean, there's off-network syndication, which has been a real strong business for us, selling
yes.
stuff.
Fear Factor.
Well,
yes.
Fear Factor, Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and I presume Wipeout will be the third. The way I look at it, that's sort of found money. That's,
Which was a clever trick, David, because quite honestly, nobody thought those shows were syndicable, and then Fear Factor broke them all.
I think that was just the perception of reality programming as a rule, and I think that's why we've seen such a change in the deal structure. That when we first started doing this, late 90s, early, 2000, networks really believed that they were dealing with perishable material, and so they were willing to pay the full license fee and let you hang on to all the rights, which in the case of Fear Factor was a very profitable situation. Now they're realizing that these are businesses, and they want to share in those profits.
Just to come back very quickly, Paul, as you say, you've got a syndicated talk show going out now. Was the fact that it was the #1 show in the UK, was that a crucial factor of the sale?
Yeah, I mean, he produced over 1,000 shows. He's the #1 daytime talk show host in the UK. They air him 5 times a day. So it was very easy for me to say, here's some tape, meet him, see how good he is. But I think, to David's point, what Endemol did very cleverly is when they created, I worked for David, when they created with me, reality shows, the idols aside, the self-contained reality show in prime time has off-net value. And Fear Factor was one of the, it was an astonishing deal at the time. And it really changed the template.
Yeah. Keith, your company, basically, you say Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right, and so on. I mean, you came from a syndication background, and yet you run this massive world-beating show, which is not that valuable off-network.
No, incredibly valuable in lots of other ways. We distribute American Idol to 150 countries, and it does all sorts of advertiser work and digital work off-air. It's very profitable, but no, it doesn't. And I would say it's a different type of reality from Wipeout and from Fear Factor. They are good standalone 1 hours, whereas Idol and Got Talent, those elimination shows are very much a journey. So very hard to have them.
And you need to be there when the decision's made.
You need to be, the water cooler TV, which is why, instantly, to some of our networks' frustration, we don't let them be simulcast online and various to be streamed later online. We want people to watch them there and then. So it does have some restrictions, but it has the other benefits. And to come to your point earlier about monetization off air, we have Idol's as a good example, X Factor's a good example. We have some countries around the world where we make more money from the ancillary exploitation than actually producing the show, telephony being a big one of it. In the US, you don't have that telephony income. There is no viable paid phone voting mechanism in the US that we've been able to to figure out.
Tried,
Despite a great deal of trying to monetize 500,000 votes a season, 500 million votes a season. But the good thing is working with advertisers is very powerful in the US that you don't have in most of Northern Europe, but you're about to. So I'm sure ITV are looking forward to that.
A billion calls a season. You could if you could monetize 50 cents on every call. Emiliano, is syndication a big issue for you, and is the market kind to you at the moment here?
Yes, I mean clearly, most of our shows are new. I mean, we got MasterChef's going to season 2. We're in the first season of Live to Dance on CBS. Biggest Loser has been has enjoyed with a good track record. I think it's good, as David said. If you manage to stay on the air long enough, it's a good found money. We're not currently active in the production of original, sort of made for the syndication market currently, but so far it's been good.
Folks, we're into the last 10 or 12 minutes. Any questions from the floor? What have I not asked the guys that you wanted to hear them talk about, please? Do come up to the mics and let us know who you are, or I'll ask them another question if you'd prefer. Well, you leave me no choice. So, Emiliano, are you going to sell to the old man, or how's the deal? Are you going to sell the company to the old man? Is it going to work? What's going to happen?
No comment.
No comment. Keith, how do you handle? You have a problem with success, but you have probably the 2 biggest shows on American network television this year. How are you going to handle? Which are you going to love the more? Who's your favorite baby?
Oh, my lawyers won't let us even go anywhere near answering that question. Idol and X Factor we love just as much as each other.
2 questions they won't answer, which is why I didn't ask them earlier. Okay, anything from the floor, guys? You've got 4 big CEOs here. As a gentleman here, please grab the mic. Please let us know who you are.
Thanks. I'm Jonathan Loughran with the Irish Film Board in Los Angeles. And my question is, on the scripted side, how important to your companies now are international co-production models in terms of getting the projects fully financed?
Scripted has historically not been a major focus for us, although in the last couple of years it's becoming much more so, and we've recently just sold a show to AMC, a scripted drama set in the West, and the co-production aspect of that deal was very important, shooting it in Canada and taking advantage of Canadian subsidies. So in our model, which is trying to be somewhat risk averse and focusing more on the cable business, foreign co-productions will play an important and big part of our business.
I want to add to that. It's actually, for ITV's business, a crucial component, because unlike the U.S. Big studios who have a volume of back catalog which they sell and constantly bringing in revenue, so they can take a lot of different risks, because quite frankly 9 out of 10 scripted shows fail, but they have that massive syndication money coming in to offset that for that one that hits. That's our best way of doing business.
We've done it. I've done it in my past life at Fox, and we've done a few of them. And you're probably also familiar with The Tudors for Showtime, which is a Reveille show. So we have done it in the past, and I guess we're looking at that as well, moving to the future.
Yes, of course, The Tudors. I'd forgotten. Yeah, which came through.
And that was definitely an Irish component to it.
There were Irish components to The Tudors, although they were Welsh, actually, but I'm sure the Irish were involved. It's not a big area for Fremantle.
Not huge. We like it. We try and do more, but not huge.
We have a second question.
Ed Waller from C21.
Hi, Ed.
Just interested in what the panel thinks about the potential for producing local versions of their imported formats, but for the US Hispanic channels.
Do you want to go first, Emiliano?
Yes. Definitely very good question, a very good opportunity. Clearly, the question, who do you pitch first? Whether Hispanic or the sort of mainstream American show, because once you go to the mainstream network, difficult to actually carve out a Hispanic version. So it's a question, a little bit of a chicken and egg. Where do you go first, and where do you think the format is best suited for? We're very interested
Can
in
I
that.
just ask you, Emiliano, has that ever been done? Has there ever been a show playing network that is then played on a Spanish network in a Spanish created version?
Because, essentially a US network would take...
Well, we did Deal or No Deal. I mean, we
You did a Spanish Deal or No
produced
Deal.
Deal or No Deal for NBC for many years. That was made easier because Telemundo is an NBC company. However, the Spanish language U.S. business is very much a part of our existing business. We have a joint venture with Televisa where we produce programming for the Mexican business, Mexican broadcaster Televisa, and then also produced for Univision and Telemundo. And we just last year produced a very successful dance show for Univision. So I understand what Emiliano is saying, and to this point, most of our business has been either with stuff that hadn't sold to a U.S. broadcaster, or we just, in the case of the dance show, it's not Dancing with the Stars, but it could be, it's in that genre. So we didn't think there really was a opportunity, so we sold it to Univision.
How did Deal do when it went to after many English language versions?
It did okay, not great. However, I would say that one of the problems with the show was that it was so altered from what we felt was a show that worked on a U.S. network.
Keith, have you ever done it?
No, and it's a constant debate. It's something our Hispanic U.S. production division is trying very hard to do. The U.S. Hispanic networks really want the formats. Usually we're precluded from giving them to them even in Hispanic language because of the broadcast agreements we have with the English-speaking U.S. networks. So it can be very restrictive. The NBC-Telemundo relationship is one avenue where it can happen for an NBC show. But it's tricky, and as David mentioned, Univision, an enormous portion of their programming is coming from Televisa in Mexico. So there isn't a huge amount of space there for independent production.
Although I think that's changing. I think they're, I think they're showing a willingness to go outside of the box to buy programming. And I will say this, that it's tricky because Univision, Telemundo would love to buy Big Brother, but CBS at this point is just not willing to let it be produced in the Spanish language in the same territory.
They feel it'll cannibalize their audience.
That's what they feel, yeah.
Paul, do you have a pitch over here? Well, wherever you pitch. Do you pitch to Telemundo and Univision?
No, not yet. And we, it can't be ignored with the numbers that they're getting the prime time networks.
I mean, looking from over the sea, suddenly Univision consistently in the top 10 on the overnight list in the last couple of months. Yeah.
So we're actually, I was just in the UK last week, and we are definitely going to start focusing our energy in that underserviced market for our company.
Yeah, Greg and I made one big trip, I think. Sir, the microphone is there. We have probably time for 2 more questions, by the way. So I'm going to take this one and then the lady.
Jack Humphrey, I have my own production company in New York City. I'm interested to know if any of you guys are making overtures to China, which is the fastest growing market in the world. It's already outpaced our country. Anybody?
I was there for a month last year and I was blown away. But that was
I mean we're set up in Asia. The sort of the home offices are located in Hong Kong, and we make visits to China on a very frequent basis to try to set up production arrangements. So something we're trying to do, although it's a little bit tricky at this point.
Well, and I think there's a very interesting example with Got Talent where actually they did finally come to the rights owners, bought the rights, you sent producers over, they actually did the deal, yeah?
Doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And it's one of their biggest successful shows though.
Yeah, it's been good. We've done a bigger relationship than that, and we've invested in a network of channels out there that have access to our format. So after a lot of attempts in the region, we figured out we needed to partner with locals, and locals who are well respected by the governing bodies. So there can be a lot of figuring out that has to be done before you get in that position.
Yeah. A lot. Emiliano is active in China?
Yes, that's not part of my day-to-day, but we're also expanding into Asia. Clearly, the issue of what you sell and how intellectual property is managed and transacted in China is evolving quite rapidly.
They seem to be beginning to recognize the principle. I mean, certainly
Yes.
they have paid good money for
Yes.
formats in the last couple of years, yeah?
And there's an interesting move of the media buying agencies into China, which is also facilitating the production of financing of content as well. So we're looking at it.
Anything to add, Paul?
ITV is actively in that market. We have deals set up, and they're pitching, and
We sold a soap, didn't we? Good Luck
Yeah,
Street we
yeah,
had there for a
so-
time. I don't
so-
think we ever made any money on it.
yeah.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Josetta Shropshire. My company is Positive Promotions TV. I hear that you have produced programming that is tried and true, done a magnificent job, but I want to ask you how open and receptive you are to new programming with new talent.
Do you want to pitch something? Would you like
Yes,
to pitch?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, start pitching.
Right now,
Legal minefield.
Can you do a one-line pitch, Josetta, or do you want to...
I'll fight you over.
No, I can do it right here, right now.
Give us the one-line pitch,
All
and you
right.
can have 4 expert opinions, and that'll wrap the session. Give us the one-line, Josetta.
The elevator pitch. The show is
We have something just like that in development.
The show is Let's Talk About It, and it focuses on spiritual beliefs in the 21st century.
Well, that's a good elevator pitch. Emiliano, do you want to hear more?
Yeah.
Not now, but eventually.
It's definitely interesting. As a creative company, we're always open to ideas. Clearly, given that we have to sell them to a network, it's a two-way dance. It's not just what we like, but what our networks believe they're going to buy. But we're always open to hearing ideas.
But if I can just say one thing on that, I mean, the key point, I think the reason that these companies have managed to take a bigger role on the global stage is that if you can build a structure internally that has, you have enough expertise across different platforms and different networks, you have enough global reach that you can then attract in enough content. If you have enough content, you can get in front of your buyers consistently and regularly. And if you can have a good reason to be in front of each network every month, you start to hear what they need and what they want. So it becomes very much a virtuous cycle.
Totally. David, good pitch? Tough sell?
I would certainly have to hear more.
Paul?
I would have to hear more as
You'd
well.
have to hear more. Okay, maybe 2 out of 4, not bad. You're not going to Hollywood quite, Josetta, but thank you all very much indeed. I'm delighted. Emiliano, David, Keith, Paul, thank you all so much, and thank you for sitting in this whole room.
Thank you.